thanks very much for talking to the Rockpit today. I've sort of known about you, I guess, for years and shook your hands, I think, a couple of times at various different gigs that you've played, but never really had a chance to chat to you or even listen to any of your music until recently when I checked out some of the older material that you'd done. Just for our readers, because we've got a lot of people, especially in the UK and the US, who look at the site, could you give us a potted history of Jaime Page musically to date?
Yeah, I can try. It's a pretty checkered past. I guess I grew up musically in the late 70s, in the classic pub rock days, which was an amazing time to be getting into rock music. When you were going to packed pubs full of people and wonderful, loud, aggressive, powerful bands. It was a very inspirational time. To see bands like Chisel when they were a rock band, before they turned into what they became, which is still cool. But there was, I was really lucky, and I managed to get into the pubs underage early on and learn a lot from them bands, and I just loved rock music and the whole vibe, everything about it. It was all I really lived for, and I guess I was lucky enough to get into a few fairly good bands fairly early when I was younger. So probably the first really big band, or really band of any note, that I was in was a band called the Invaders, which was in 1981, I think it was, 1980, 81. But
so how old were you then?
About 19.
Yeah.
And I was thrilled because I was playing with all these people that were legends of the scene at the time. You had John Worrell, who used to be in Fatty Lumpkin. He was, he used to bow down and scrape to him. He was such a legend, such a great singer. Brenton, sorry, not Brenton, that was another band. But John Pekovic from Bricks, and Steve Gard, who was a school friend of mine from Whyalla, who was a huge influence for me. He was a wonderful, wonderful guitar player. And from there, I guess I found my feet, got to learn to be a little bit more professional about what I was doing. Lost my way a bit musically at the same time, because you get sucked into
all the other things that come with being in a band.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking I'd rather be listening to a Motorhead or playing Motorhead or this or that or otherwise, or whatever other bands were popular. I had a pretty wide range from all the heavier bands, and it was basically, okay, now we're playing Angels, we're playing AC/DC, or we're playing all this other stuff. So I had to swallow the musical pride and just learn from it and enjoy the process. But I always wanted to be in a heavier, more exciting.
It must have been quite hard in Australia, I guess, because I was lucky enough to grow up in the UK, so all these bands were our regular bands that we go out and see.
Exactly.
I lost count of times, the number of times I saw Motorhead before I was 16. So
exactly.
it's the isolation, I guess, of Australia that probably shaped you as a musician in those early years.
In a lot of respects. I was very independent at the same time, and I was really determined to do what I wanted. So I stayed with the Invaders for about a year, and then managed to make my escape for the first time to England. And I was lucky enough to one of the first auditions I went to in this little place in East London. Must have been 200 guitar players there, and we all just sort of queued up with our little guitars in our bags, waiting for a turn. And I sort of managed to score the gig, and the singer turned out to be a fella called Dennis Wilcox, who used to sing with Iron Maiden in one of the early incarnations. So that was really lucky. The band was fairly ordinary, but that we eventually evolved that band into another band with Dennis and some other mates, and that we got to play the Ruskin Arms, which was cool.
Yeah.
You know, one of my dream little venues back in the day. And sorry if this goes on a bit, but
that's okay.
there's so much to go through. But basically, I came back to Perth for a holiday, or to see Mum and Dad and do some family things. And I was supposed to go back to the UK. We had gigs booked at the Ruskin, whatever. And I hooked up with a bunch of people here who said, look, you know, you got 3 days before you go home. Why don't we do something here instead? And we'll put some money into it, and you can take a really good band back with you to London, which was the band that eventually became Gypsy.
Mm.
So I thought, cool, you know, loved Robert, the singer. He was an old mate of mine from way back. He was a bit of a madman, bit of an animal. And we got a pretty solid band behind it, and I had to make the decision to go back to England to get my gear and tell poor Dennis that the gigs that we were going to do weren't going to happen, which was what he made me promise to do when I left in the first place, was to make sure I came back and we did the gigs. Anyway, we got back, and then I saw the set list, and it was Angels, AC/DC. So, oh no, you know, we're supposed to be a rock band, a metal band. We're supposed to be doing Maiden style stuff. We're supposed to be doing Judas Priest, not Midnight Oil and Angels, whatever. But okay, Pain with a Purpose. You know, we've got to get the band working. So we had a band that looked like a cross between Iron Maiden and Judas Priest, and sounded like Hakadaka, which is good fun. But we eventually tried to mutate it into what we really wanted it to be. We recorded an album in Singapore, which became Black Alice, Endangered Species, with Steve James, the producer, who became a great friend and great helper in later years. And we promptly managed to tank as we got heavier.
Yeah.
You know, so the music got better, the crowds got smaller, and the band basically disintegrated around that. So at that point I'd realised that I'd sort of driven myself a little bit up a blind alley, and the one thing in my mind was to just get back to the UK and start over. In the meantime, I was lucky enough to get offered the gig with Trilogy right at that point, you know, and I still desperately wanted to go back to the UK, but I loved John Ryder and what he was doing as a player, and I loved the drummer Peter Thompson. He was fantastic. Loved all the spin-offs, you know, from Saracen and Everest and all the other bands that they used to be involved with, and I guess I became like mini John Mayer, you know, the person who took all John's gigs when he didn't want them anymore, you know. And we had a ball. I really grew up musically with that band. I really found my way quite beautifully with them, and you know, I pulled John into a much heavier direction, and we had our Rush influences coming in and lots of other things, so it was really good. You know, some of the songs that we were writing were starting to develop quite nicely, but in the middle of all that, I had some other issues that brought me down through that period. I basically, after we recorded the Life on Earth album, I had to basically escape and go back to the UK. I couldn't do it anymore. And back in the UK, starting from nothing again, I just basically sat down in that crappy little flat and tried to work out a plan of what I really wanted. So I sat down and made a short list of the perfect band, if I could put the perfect band together, who would be in it, etc., and how I'd go about it. You know, so I put Cozy Powell, the drummer, and blah, these other people, you know, just tried to visualise what I wanted to see happen, and went about trying to do that. And as fate would have it again, I was called by my mate Steve, who was living in England. He said, look, I've got a gig for you to come down and have a look at with this Irish band called Drive Shaft.
Yeah.
So, and as fate would have it, Drive Shaft was originally a band taken over by a friend of mine who worked at RAK Music Publishing, which was Mickey Most. Mickey Most thing. So I went down there and she looked most unimpressed with everything and everybody. And I sort of found out by probing her a little bit that what she really wanted to do was put the singer in a band around what was the falling apart Whitesnake of the time, which was Mel Galley, Cozy Powell and Neil Murray.
Yeah.
So she didn't want his mates in the band. And it was just a charade that she was going through to put him in a studio with this producer friend of mine. It was just total coincidence that it had to be them. Anyway, my friend refused, the singer refused to do that, to let his mates down, which was a very noble thing to do, because they were really lovely people, but you know, he had an opportunity, one big opportunity. He probably should have taken it and had a little surrogate Whitesnake going on there. Anyway, the that band sort of meandered on. We ended up doing a lot of writing and recording with John Sinclair, who was the keyboard player with Uriah Heep and the heavy metal kits back in the day.
That's where I remember that name from. Yeah, Gary Holdson's band.
Yeah, he was a wonderful character. And you know, we started doing some good work with him, with Jerry, the singer. But again, it sort of developed a little bit away from where I wanted to go. That was sort of headed to a more Bon Jovi type direction. Then John got a call to join Ozzy Osbourne, and that sort of put us on hiatus for a while. We waited for him to come back so we could start working again. And I sort of went off doing a bit of one-off work with all kinds of everybody, whoever wanted a session or anything whatsoever. Did some really good stuff that was totally non-rock or metal. You know, just learning skills, learning production techniques, etc. Then eventually got the call to go back in the studio with these guys, with John, when he came back off tour with Ozzy. And Aussie tours are obviously very hard. And he was a bit of a wreck, you know, and he was struggling to pull this project together. Anyway, you know, they were spending a lot of money on the project, you know, talking really expensive RAK studios, you know, very, very high-end studio, and it wasn't going so well. John had to go back to Aussie again. The thing was starting to meander, and we basically said to Brenda, the manager, said, look, that idea you had with Cozy was probably always going to be best for Jerry. Why don't you ring Cozy and get him to come down, have a listen and see if he wants to take over and do something with this. She did. She rang him up, he came down, had a listen, thought, yeah, it's sort of okay, and started redoing some drum tracks and reproducing it. And it sounded pretty amazing what he did, you know, sitting in a studio with Cozy Powell while he's sound checking, and it's like listening to Rainbow Rising, you know. Yeah. He's sitting there destroying cymbals and doing the whole Cozy thing, because he's a bit of a character. But we honestly thought at that point, okay, I'm going to stay in the band. We've got a singer, we've got Neil Murray sitting next to me, reading about himself in Kerrang. Now what have I done this week?
Yeah, I can imagine.
Which
that.
bar was I at?
Yeah.
And we thought, well, this is it. We're on our way. But unfortunately, we couldn't get a deal at the time. Basically, because of my lack of profile and the singer Jerry's. So I was basically in a situation where I had to sacrifice myself so that they could find someone else or find other people to form a name band around Jerry at the time. In the meantime, we'd still been writing. I've been writing, again, just for my own pleasure, and Cozy picked up on a couple of them songs. So we did go in to record a couple of my songs with a view to doing an album with Cozy separately to what they were possibly doing or something of that nature. One of the songs, which was pretty close to me, remained unreleased, which was a song called Unchain My Heart, which got us really close to getting some kind of a deal. Apparently even Gene Simmons has expressed an interest in the songs. But it was a departure. The song was a departure. Our singer Jerry really didn't like it, didn't like that departure, and the thing crumbled. Cozy got asked to join Black Sabbath and said, Cozy, off you go. You go and do your thing. You know, you've got a life to live. You know, don't worry. And to be quite honest, I gave up at that point and thought, you know, the style of music that is becoming popular isn't going to work for me. I'm really not into it. I don't want to be in a Bon Jovi cover band. I don't want to get into the more grungy or thrash metal stuff. That's not my cup of tea. So I basically moved back to Australia with my family. I had a young daughter at the time, and sort of waited for the call to come back and do a solo album, hopefully, or do something with Cozy.
So how do you look back on those times now? I mean, you were sort of on the cusp of what could have been something wonderful, more than once. So.
I had quite a few close calls, which really, to be honest, screwed with my head at the time, really badly. In the middle of all that, I came back to Sydney to do an album for a movie called Sons of Steel, which was with the singer from Black Alice. We had this amazing rhythm section, which was Andy Cichon and I think his name was Scotty Johnson from Rose Tattoo, who were just stunning. And playing with them guys in Sydney for the brief time that we did just totally screwed with my head as well, because I went back to England and the guys were nowhere near as good.
Really?
You know, these guys were just sensational. Anyway, backtracking a little bit, that's a bit pre-Cozy. But, you know, I had to actually go and pick John Sinclair up from his house in Wales. He had a nice little rock star abode. And he's sitting in the car and he's just finished the Ultimate Sin tour with Ozzy. He says, you know, Ozzy and Jake have had a disagreement and he wants a guitar player. You know, I'll call Ozzy and see if I can get you a go. I just sat there and went, holy shit. But it didn't happen. The next time I saw him, he says, he's got this new young kid who's pretty cool called Zach. So, sorry, no joy. Wow,
I didn't know that. That's a new story to me.
Never told anybody that story ever.
I spoke to Zach a couple of weeks ago.
Really?
He's a lovely guy, funny guy.
Absolutely.
But and Ozzy, of course, they're talking about him getting back together with Jake Ely.
Yeah,
so
that's amazing, isn't it?
It's funny how the story all sort of like weaves into itself. But after the Sabbath thing, apparently he's looking at getting him back in the solo band.
That's amazing.
So wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, you've had a career that I guess many people would kill for, but it must have been such a struggle.
It was a struggle because there was no money. It was all just dreams and hoping and scraping by.
Yeah.
And at that point too, the lady who was investing in our band called me up and said, by the way, Cozy and Jack Bruce are getting together. and they need a guitar player. Do you know of any guitar players who'd want to do that? And me, in my infinite stupidity and niceness, said, "Oh, because I was more concerned with being loyal to her and the money that she'd put into the project." I said, "No, I don't know of any guitarists offhand who would be available."
Do you regret saying?
I've lived with that.
Jack Bruce, wow.
That was a killer. But my sense of moral decency of doing the right thing by someone who'd stuck by us and put all that money in, I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it.
It's an amazing story, and I guess as well, your recent revelation that you're transgender, that must have all been going on, I guess, through all that time. So it must have made it even harder dealing with those issues as well as what was going on musically for you.
Well, them issues were happening all the way through that whole period, through the early Dennis Wilcox band days, through the Invaders, but it really hit home during Trilogy. That was the personal meltdown that I was alluding to when I had to leave Trilogy, because I loved the band dearly, I loved all the people in it, but I was seeking treatment for what I was going through, and at that point letting it out to a doctor or a therapist was too much for me to deal with. All of a sudden, something that I'd hidden and kept locked away in a solid steel coffin, so to speak, or a little steel vault, my secret, had got out, and I became totally anxiety-ridden and paranoid that now that it was out, people would find out and they would basically destroy me or hate me.
Is that the feeling you had, that everyone would desert you and you'd be alone? I mean, it must have been so hard in those days compared to, I guess, the climate today, where you've got people like, I know just a few weeks ago, I think it was Bryan Adams or Bruce Springsteen, I know they both did it, cancel gigs in Mississippi because of the LGBT legislation over there. So do you feel that the decision that you'd made has been made easier by the climate that we have these days of acceptance, or more acceptance?
I mean, back in the day, there was none of the information that we had, and I was still petrified of myself, petrified of everything. Not as a very immature person for my age too, as a slow developer, as a human being. So I just didn't have the coping tools to deal with it, and I loved the music in my career so much that it became a choice of either you have a career or you have a life. You're not going to have both. But I kept denying it, kept working around it. I backtracked. I pretended nothing had ever happened, and then I was going to be fine, and let's make the music heavier, and let's ignore it. But
do you think that was a part of it? Because I mean, it's obviously a very male-orientated world, rock and roll, despite the strong female role models in there. It's, do you think that you felt that there would be no place for you?
Yes.
Yeah.
And to make it worse, with everything that I was writing at the time, it just naturally evolved in a more commercial, poppy sense as well, which in real terms, in all honesty, was my feminine side expressing itself. So like with songs like, I don't know if you know many of the Trilogy songs, but
I've listened to a lot of them over the last few days, so I probably will.
I mean, the song Wasting Time was
a
classic, typical one. That was originally called You Can't Hide. And I'd written that and the lyrics. John didn't really like the title, but he changed it to Wasting Time, which was cool, which was still very relevant. But that song, to me, was the first of the more commercial songs where I was expressing my true self through, whether I realised it or not, I didn't know. You know, I listen back to it now and go, my God, you know, I see exactly where that came from. You know, and the same thing happened with Cozy, with the songs I was writing with Cozy, or for Cozy. You know, the song that everyone loved was a pop song. You know, that's what killed the band. It was like, Cozy loved it, but you know, Cozy, you should be playing in Black Sabbath, not playing a pop song, you know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But a lot of the stuff that I've worked on, even for the new album at the moment, there's still things that were written back then through that period that are still on the new album today.
I was going to ask about that because I know that there's a lot of music that you recorded for the project that hasn't made it onto the new album.
There is, yes.
And will probably come on, hopefully, on a subsequent release. But I was going to ask about how old are some of the songs on there, or the ideas for some of those songs?
Yeah, there's one particular song on there was written. Backtracking a little, I guess the catalyst for some of that was the song that ended up on Brian May's album. I don't know if you heard that, the Resurrection,
yeah.
Which was one of two songs that I'd written for Cozy, with the poppy song and the heavier song.
Yeah.
When we went into the studio to do the two songs, he decided that he wanted to do the poppy song, not the heavy song, and spend all the time on that because he thought that was a hit. And anyhow, I was supposed to fly back and play on the heavier one, and I was working here at the time at Cosmic, and they rang up and said, look, Cozy's had an accident, you can't come over, he'd fallen off a horse or something. And then I forgot all about it. Then they said, oh, by the way, Brian May is playing your bits, so don't bother coming, you know.
Yeah.
And no,
it's not bad fill-in.
No, it was brilliant. So he did his business with all that, and you know, I was still writing with them sort of people in mind, you know, whether I could get Brian to use more songs or whatever. But there's the last song on the album, which is Goodbye Angel, was actually written with Brian May in mind.
If you'd asked me to guess, that would have been my guess to which song it would have been on
Yeah,
the
it
album.
was totally with him in mind. But that song was also 3 different songs written through that 1989 period of chaos in my life, where I just basically pulled apart 3 different songs that all had a good bit in it, what I considered a good bit, plonked them all together to create one relatively strong song out of the 3. You know, so that was 1988, 89 when that song was originally conceived. And I tried to redo it with Black Steel, but it was just wrong with Black Steel. It just didn't work. And so I redid it and re-recorded it a billion times until finally we found a vehicle for it that actually worked. You know, right now it was the perfect song to finish the album. The album, this current album, was never meant to be an album. It was just a quick EP, which ended up being a full-length album because we just kept throwing all the as many songs as we could squeeze onto it.
Yeah, you said to me earlier before we turned on the tape that originally it wasn't even meant to be an album. It was just something for you, for your own personal
That's
pleasure.
right. It's just total labour of love. I used to sit there just loving it, just sitting there with the headphones on going, you know, what craziness can I come up with? You know, so, I mean, if I took you through some of the songs on the album, I mean, I listen back to some of the things now and go, I don't know how I did that. Where did that come from, you know? You know, because it was some of the modulations, some of the chord sequences were really off the wall. I would just literally sit there analysing each bar, each bit, and just thinking, how can I make this more and more interesting or or get more emotion into it. So I might leave something for a month and go back to it and go, right, I've got just a bit to make this sound even more miserable, you know.
You did well. I mean, the album does sort of put you through the ringer, even as a listener. There's so much emotion on there, everything from great despair and sadness to a sort of wonderful sense of hope.
Exactly.
And hopefully that's what people take out of the end of it, that no matter what you go through, there's always some light there at the end of the tunnel for you. Where did the name for the album come from? Deepest Black? Is that just the lowest point for you?
Dark Universe was always the name of the album.
Sorry.
From day one.
I'll edit that bit.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
I'm thinking of the opener.
Yeah, no, it's logical.
Yeah.
I mean, Deepest Black was the catalyst for the whole thing. Because that was the one where I sat down and just mined the absolute feelings of melancholy, despair, and sadness that I was feeling. And I just wanted to be able to turn that into music. You know, I was looking at a lot of visual things at the time, a lot of Gothic art.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, so I'd be thinking in pictures while I was doing it. So you'd be imagining this place, imagining everything about it, and trying to make it sound as ethereal as possible. You know, so I was just loving getting into that dark place. You know, I loved it. I used to love other bands that did that too. You know, so it was just a very cathartic way to write.
Yeah, I mean, it's an amazing song, and it's probably, I think, the most powerful way you could have opened the album. And Donna's voice on it just suits the music and goes with the guitar so well. For me, I mean, I guess listening to it, she's always sort of like had that sort of Ann Wilson type element to her voice. But on here, it's so sort of powerful and gritty, and it just adds so much. Was there anyone else that you could have seen singing for you? I mean, I can't imagine anyone else.
Well, funnily enough, I'll try not to get too boring for you, but the first person to hear Deepest Black, apart from my daughter, who's an opera singer, and I was trying to impress her with some of the choral things.
Oh, okay.
Trying to give her a vehicle too, to say, look, Love, can you maybe do all this a cappella for me? Which she never got to do because we couldn't find the time to do it, because she lives in Italy.
Oh, right, okay.
Sadly. But I played it to Stuart James, the guy who produced it, when he used to work here at Cosmic. You know, we just went out, we sat in my little Cosmic van. I put on the demo for him, and he just sat there and melted. He was, oh my God, I've got to record this. I have to record it. I said, that's great, Stu. We've got a plan. Let's see where it leads us. And then we didn't do anything. We just left it, and I just kept writing. In the meantime, I started playing a little bit with Donna when she got MS. And the catalyst was playing a gig at the Rockpit Room, which was a charity gig. And we just put this little band together for that. And she was in a bad way at the time, a really bad way. So I was literally leading her around the venue and trying to get her safely into a car and get her home. And she said, oh, what have you been working on? And I said, oh, I've got this one song. She said, I'll whack it in. She said, oh, why not? See what you reckon. And she just sat there and listened to it, and she convulsed. You know, she was going, oh my God, I'm feeling this. I've got to do this. I want to do this. This is awesome. I love it. I can really see myself getting right into that song. We got to record it together. So that was the start of it.
Oh, it's an amazing song, and the album. What I love about it is, even though there is obviously the emotion, everything in there is the variety as well. It's hard. Everyone seems to want to put labels and tags on things these days. What genre is that? What genre is this? What genre is that? How do you describe the album as a whole?
Well, it's really difficult to categorise because, you know, I've tried myself. You know, I sort of jokingly refer to as it being, you know, if Genesis and Pink Floyd wore gothic makeup, you'd probably be close to it, you know. But it's just basically music, progressive rock music for people that love melodic, heavy rock for what it is. I find it really difficult to, because it's so different. But that's what I loved about bands like Zeppelin too.
Yes.
I treated that as, well, if Zeppelin can do Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You and Dazed and Confused on the one album, why can't I put commercial songs with heavy songs too, and have an album that has each song being a character unto itself? You know, like the Beatles would do too.
Yes,
know?
yeah.
You know, don't get stuck having to make everything the same and formularised. Just
I mean, for me, the only issue normally I have with bands who do that, or artists that do that, is that some of it sounds a lot better than the other stuff, and you end up thinking that they're just playing the field. But here there's a real sense of wholeness. It's a sort of release that you can listen to from start to finish. And I find it actually quite hard to just skip to a particular track on there. I just put it on in the car all the way through.
We're finding that with the band themselves. You know, they're always arguing at rehearsals about, you know, which song they like. You know, and it's always a different one every time we get together. Same with my wife as well. She listens to it, and you know, 1 minute it's this, the next minute it's that. But,
well, it was. I first became aware of it, I must admit, when I was talking to Craig. He was playing with Chris Gibbs one night, and we had a chat afterwards. And he said, "I should get in touch with Jamie and listen to his album." And I must admit, I was expecting some sort of power metal. To be honest,
everyone, I would expect that too.
And I think a lot of listeners or people who know you might expect that, but
absolutely, to
me, it's more you. I mean,
exactly.
We've only had this one conversation before, but I feel that I can see more of you in this album than in some of the previous other work that you've put out there. Tell us a little bit about the band. Are they called True Spirit? Is that the name of the band?
That's the name of the band.
Because you've got Donna in there, who's known from, well, I guess many bands, with her husband Graham, and you've got Craig from, who's a wonderful bassist, even when he's got the Gene Simmons makeup on. And I guess the only member of the band I don't know is the drummer, Mick. What's Mick? Has Mick played anywhere with you before?
Yes, me and Mick go a long way back to first seeing him at the old Stone Crow, which was some little dive of a venue in about 1982 when he was just a little kid. And I think me and John Ryder from Trilogy went down to see him because we'd heard about this hot little wonder kid drummer, and so we had to go and see for ourselves how good he was. And since that period, me and Mick have worked together consistently through dozens of different bands. Most of them will be backing bands for other people, where they just want a couple of hired hands for this or that, so they'll call me and they'll call Mick. Or we did a thing with Dave Crosby called Cros and the Monsters, which was a bit of an ode to the 80s and 90s. Mick was in that as well. Mick was in the Deep Purple tribute that we had as well.
That's right.
So we've played together so many times, and we instinctively know each other's playing inside out. But originally he didn't play on the album. We had Troy Brazier playing on the album, who was the drummer with Donna and Graham in some of their bands. But True Spirit evolved out of what was members of Nitro Zeppelin, a little Zeppelin thing that we had, which sort of
faded
away.
The Civic, I think.
The Civic, yeah.
A few years ago.
Yeah, that was an enjoyable gig, that one. But yeah, True Spirit just evolved out of the ashes of everything else that was there. By the time we got back to the studio, Mick was well and truly ensconced in the band. So we already had 3 songs recorded with Troy, and we recorded the last 3 songs with Mick, which is the last 3 songs on the album, but we didn't have time to get Mick to play on Deepest Black, which would have been his party piece. He would have destroyed Deepest Black.
Would, yeah.
You know, that was probably a mistake, really. We should have made time. But I mean, Troy did a wonderful job too, and Mick is the first person to credit Troy and what he did on the album. But that song was made for Mick. And when we played it last night at rehearsals with Mick, second time through, once he'd actually listened to it and got the gist of what was going on, it was just took it into another zone, and Donna sort of went crazy, and it's like, oh my God, this is unbelievable.
Oh, I mean, it's an amazing album. There's something on there for everyone. The launch show is at the Charles Hotel, isn't it?
Yep.
I had the date written down here.
29th of April. It is Friday the 29th of April.
29th of April. And you'll be playing the album front to back,
Yes.
or way to go? Is that?
Yep,
And
the whole thing.
Anything else that you'll be putting in? If you
Not in that set. We're going to be we'll be doing an album set, and then we'll be having basically what we sort of call a bit of a party set afterwards, where we can go, okay, we've done this, we've got through it.
So you'll be getting back to the Angels and AC/DC?
No. We've got a bunch of favourite covers and things that we normally do. There's a bit of Trilogy, and there's a bit of Rush, and a bit of Zeppelin. But it's really just a relaxed way to release the tension after everything that we've done, because the album it's been a very tense experience to get where it is, and by the time we get to that last song on that, I think we'll be emotionally shattered.
I think so. Going back to the album just for a second, what was the hardest part of it for you? The process, like when you knew it was going to come out.
Yep.
Was it the lyrics? The
lyrics were easy.
Or did they were what?
They were done.
Flowed for you.
The lyrics I'd done years ago, so all that was in the can. The hardest thing really was having a vision in my head of what I wanted it to end up like, and the demos that I'd already put together myself were very close to finished products anyway. So we actually used my original demos. We basically imported them into the studio system and just kept adding to them. So there's lots of guitar parts are from my original demos, some keyboard parts, or some of the pads are from things I've programmed.
Yeah.
And there was a very clear vision as to where it had to be. But the most difficult thing towards the end was my personal perfectionism.
Yeah, I know a few musicians like that.
Yeah, you'd be listening to something going, I just want to do that again. I desperately want to do that guitar line again, or I want to change this, or I want to change that. And I drove Stewie, the producer, totally mad.
Yeah.
But there came a time when we had to go, enough's enough. You just got to stop, and you got to let it go. You just got to put it out there, otherwise you'll never finish the damn thing, you know?
Well, I think you're right. It just gets to that point, doesn't it? Just a few quick questions to close with, if we can.
Sure.
Just have a quick look at that. Yeah, that's great. Where did it all start for you, as far as music's concerned? Was there a defining moment? Or?
Yes, I saw that defining moment today, actually.
Did you?
Funnily enough, we were cleaning out some of the crap up here when we were just moving everything around. And I had a couple of old vinyl albums sitting there. And I had the first Zeppelin album, the original that I bought when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And we were just about to throw all this stuff in the bin, and I said, oh no, that's the album that made me do all this. I can't throw that out. It's got sentimental value. And I actually bought that in 1972 when I lived in Africa. And I remember just going into this little record store, seeing the blimp on the cover of the first Zeppelin album, thinking, oh, that looks really cool, I love that. Then turned it over and there was Jimmy Page. It's like, oh my God, there's another Page. Because my dad was a James Page as well. And I thought, oh, wow, how cool. That's who I want to be. I want to be like that. Put the album on, just fell totally head over heels in love with it. And that was my defining moment.
Oh, it's a great place to start. And who is it that most inspires you as a guitarist? And does anyone continue to inspire you these days? Or
yes.
Is anyone doing anything new?
I love so many different styles of music that it's really hard to define one. I'd have to say if there was one guitar player that does keep inspiring me, it's Jeff Beck, ironically. Jeff Beck's touch and his melodicism is something I desperately try and throw into my playing. I love what he does, so he would be my number one in that respect.
And he was great when he came over as well.
He's brilliant.
I think I know that the answer to the next one, so I'm not even going to ask you that. If you could, with the fly on the wall for the creation of any great album, just to see how it all came together. What would it have been for you? Just to see, is there an album that's inspired you so much sonically that you just wonder how the hell did they do that?
Yep. Probably I'd have to pick a song off an album, which was Genesis' Supper's Ready off Foxtrot. To me, that one song encapsulates everything that I love about progressive rock music and everything about me. That song,
wow,
that big 30-minute epic or whatever it is, 20-minute epic. That's the song I'd want to sit in on as a fly on the wall and watch them doing it again.
It's an amazing song, and the question that we ask everyone at the end of every interview, and you're probably going to have one of the most interesting answers we've ever had, I'm guessing, is what is the meaning of life?
That's a really good one. I've honestly, seriously, I could talk to you all night about the meaning of life. I love everything about the thoughts of spirituality and otherworldliness. And I'm a really deep thinker in that respect. And I think if I had to encapsulate the meaning of life, I would say just to be true to yourself. That is the meaning of life for me. If you're honest and true to yourself, you're never going to go wrong.